Hey everybody, welcome back to the series on the Project 1967 Ford F-250 ramp truck. Today we got a bit of an announcement. You didn't think I knew what I was doing, did you? That's right. The 460 is running. I think that today it is a good time to go over how the engine is now running in our 67 bump side here, because this truck had no provisions for anything EFI related, and thankfully I found a small business, basically a person that started a business converting the harnesses from our donor truck over there into standalone units that work in any vehicle. So when I say standalone harness, that doesn't mean that I bought a harness and computer that are designed for our truck. They are designed to work in anything. If you wanted to put this engine into a Geo Metro, if you had a welder and enough metal, this computer and harness could make it work. So I thought maybe it would be a good idea to go over some of how that works, just in case anybody out there is looking to do this kind of thing themselves, because I didn't really find anybody that had, and although, spoilers, I'm very happy with the product, not a lot of information about what you will actually receive or what the service or product actually is. So let's dive into it. We are nowhere near complete on this swap process. We have just gotten to the point where it is running. So as a quick refresher, this originally had a 352 Ford FEV8 in it. I used some Transdap mount adapter to put this 1996 7.5 liter 460 V8 into this truck, and it has behind it a ZF5 5-speed manual transmission. Now that is important because if you're using an automatic, then you have some other things to consider as far as automatic transmission control, but as far as this vehicle goes, the ECU simply does not care about that transmission that is behind it, and it doesn't affect anything. But if you're looking at the engine here, you can see there is a harness with all of these tags on it, and every plug is labeled, and it basically breaks down into two sections. So we'll start with the actual engine harness. And I have run this in a way, many people, and the factory configuration is to run it over to the driver's side here, which is currently a mess because I got a bunch of chassis harness wires that need to be cleaned up, but all of that stuff irrelevant to the engine running essentially. But many people put the ECU over here. In the 96 truck, it runs over here by the brake booster, and it's got a spot in there, and the ECU actually lives inside the firewall. For my truck, that wasn't a great solution because this is a manual transmission truck, and I've got a master cylinder for the clutch there. So not a lot of space between the steering column, the power brake booster, and the clutch system. I didn't see a way that was going to work, so I decided to run it over to the passenger side firewall. So down there at the bottom of the video basically right now, below that blue wire in the firewall is the ECU, with the ECU living inside the truck and the connector just sticking out basically from the firewall. From there, there is basically a bulkhead connection back here behind the engine. All the stuff I'm still gotta, tie up and make it neat and heat-proof and all that stuff, but it sits there, and that connects everything to do with basically the fuel injection part of it. So we got the 8 injectors, as well as the ignition control, idle air control, and some other sensors like we got under there, we got the air temperature sender and the coolant temperature sender for the computer. But other than that, pretty much pared down. So that does mean that for the system that I'm using, not necessarily the one you have to choose, but the one I'm using, I was able to bypass all of the AC system for the idle up for the air, and there's also some EGR controls over there. All of that stuff in this case is being bypassed. This is a standalone computer that is as minimalistic as possible. That harness then comes over here and joins into the main loom, which splits off into some relays that he has added into the harness for ECU power. I don't really know what FPM stands for. However, my suspicion is that it has something to do with bypassing the inertia switch. The factory system on this truck used an inertia switch that would basically kill power to the fuel pump and the ECU if there was a collision detected. And with this kind of swap, we would have to bypass that. I think that might be what that has to do with. I could be totally wrong. But either way, added relays in. What that means is, also goes ahead and does inline fuses here. What that means is all I was responsible for was getting power, constant power source, to the computer, which will go into the relays, and it's actually a relayed switch to turn on the computers. And then an ignition key-on source, which I am using the key-on source that would have been on the factory starter/alternator relay from the factory truck. That just is a sensor to if the key is on or start, and that powers the ECU up and then ground. And that's it. That is all that you are responsible for when it comes to powering this computer. Up above there, it connects into what I believe is the ignition control module, and above that, the map sensor. So this is not a MAF, this is an MAP, map sensor style system. So no math in the intake tubing, which is, personally for me, a bonus. I hate having to deal with the map sensors on vehicles. I like the map stuff, but it does mean you have to mount that map sensor up there somewhere. It fits in just fine. We got nothing but room in this engine bay. Down below there, I haven't quite gotten everything done just yet. We also have the test port available to us. I currently just kind of have it tucked in down here. That's what some of this bundle of wires is. So we got the test port there. So this is an OBD1 computer, meaning that, you basically jump pins in order to get the thing to read your codes, as well as a tac signal out, which was a bonus to me. I didn't even know that was going to be part of it. So if you were wondering, yes, you will get a tac out. So you can hook up a aftermarket or whatever tachometer, and you'll get that ECU readout. Then the O2 sensor wire runs down from there and under the truck to anywhere basically you want to put the O2 sensor. I did ask at some point, how much wiggle room am I going to have in that, because I did very much so relocate the O2 sensor, but plenty of room there. Everything went together super easy as far as the computer goes. I was really pleased. So that's what you get. That's what you're going to receive if this is something that you are purchasing. So that leads me to another point of what you're not going to receive. So you're going to send a good chunk of that harness out, and what you're going to get back is your standalone harness. You're not going to get a charging system, and you're not going to get a starter system. Those, although they are integrated into the harness on this 96 truck, that system is integrated in a way that I frankly just feel like it's probably not logical to try and keep them, and it would probably make it very difficult to keep this a standalone unit. You would probably end up having to use more of the factory harness. Again, that's just my speculation. I will say I did not know that. Perhaps it's on me for not asking. In my mind, it was going to include at least the alternator charging system, since I sent the alternator charging system harness with it. But after the fact, having done a little research, a charging system for this thing is very simple. Like there's really not a whole heck of a lot to it. Just going to have to put a new pigtail into here, and that basically will complete the circuit down to here, and then it's essentially a one-wire alternator. So this post here will provide the charging power, which I will then feed back towards the battery. Super simple. I'm not upset about that at all. And the starting system, even easier. I was able to use I apologize for the mess of wires right here right now. I still left all of the factory bump sides harness over here. I'm not going to remove it until I get the charging system done, just in case I need to reference it at all, which I doubt I will. But yeah, just bear with the messy wiring for the moment. But this is the factory, not the factory, this is actually a generic, basically, starter relay. And it's just getting power from the battery, sending one side to the starter, and on the other side I'm using for the reference. So this is basically the reference wire coming off the opposite side, and that says whenever the key is in start to send power to the solenoid to click it over. That's a little bit different than how it's set up on the older starter, where it was actually powered off of the other side of this, but still works out just fine. And I've actually used this exact system on many cars, including a particular Angry Butt Celica at one point to fix its starter system. So that was super easy. So it just takes, this is from the ignition key right here, and this is again from the battery. This goes to the starter, so the starter's always got 12 volts. And then whenever you click over the key, this relay will click over and engage this post, sending power to the starter down there on the solenoid and say, hey, do the start thing. Real easy, real simple. So you won't get that. Another important thing you're not going to get is any kind of fuel reference. It is up to you to do a fuel pump system, basically. So this is a standalone system that you could use any kind of fuel pump with, well, any kind of electronic fuel pump with. All you need to do is send it fuel pressure. The ECU is not controlling what the fuel pump is doing in this case. So I used the factory harness pigtails, basically, out of the parts truck to both tanks and the factory switch. Let's look at that inside the truck. I don't have it mounted yet, but I did wire it up to get it working, because this is very much so a work in progress. This is nowhere near complete. But it's dark in here. I'll try my best, okay? Hidden in the shadows right here. This is the fuel tank selector off of the other truck, and that is just sending, back and forth the 12 volt power to front tank or rear tank. And it also switches which of them is, sending a signal to a fuel gauge. Really simple. And then from there, I just added a relay up in here by the battery as far as turning on whichever fuel pump is selected. Easy as that. So as of now, is it worth it? I would say yes, because although it does take a little bit more time and effort to send a harness to somebody, have them, convert it and send it back. There's a time loss there, especially with everything that's going on right now. However, I went into that with zero expectations. I didn't want to be that customer that was all like, I need this by tomorrow. We're gonna have to shut down. It's not like that at all. So I was just patient, and like, when you get to it, you get to it. You're gonna lose some time there. But I got the harness. The first day that I started to work on getting the harness installed, I had the computer mounted. Oh, I didn't show you the computer yet. I had the computer mounted, the harness mounted, and powered. And the second day, I had the fuel system done and fired it up. And it fired up first try and ran smooth. What more do you want than that? Like, if you were building your own harness or building your own computer, it wouldn't be that way. And if you were modifying the original harness and computer, you might have gotten there in one day. It wouldn't look clean, and there would just be stuff everywhere. So it would take you a long time to figure out where everything needs to go. So as of right now, yeah, I'm going to say it's worth the money. And it was, fix this in post if you mess this up. I think it was $650. I think that's right. And for me, that was money well spent. In here, this is the passenger side. Hey, by the way, I put carpet in the truck. Ain't it nice? In here, I've got the computer mounted over here on the passenger side. Underneath the blower, I kept it out of the way of the heater core so that there's not any future accidents there. But I've got it over here on the passenger side footwell area. I'm going to actually build a box that connects it basically up into the blower. And once that's done, this will never be seen. And it's very far out of the way where your feet are. Like, there's zero problems if I if I just build a little box around that, you'll never even know it's there, and that was just the most logical place for it to be for me. It could have possibly gone over here sideways on the wall right here, but I'm worried about water because this is where the heater blower takes in air, and I've noticed there's some little bit of rust around there, which leads me to believe that there's some water, and I wanted to keep that thing dry. Alright, so it starts, it runs. What all is left? Well, a lot, quite honestly. I haven't shown you the gas tank filler that I finished. I still have to finish the rear tank filler, so we don't have fuel in the rear tank just yet. And gauges. We don't have any gauges as of right now, so I haven't been running it for very long. Water temperature, I have an aftermarket water temperature gauge in the truck. I think that if I wire that directly up to the unused water temperature sender in the intake manifold, that will work. Otherwise, I already have a water temperature sender adapter that I can just, put into the system somewhere, and water temp will be solved. RPM, I do have an aftermarket tach. I have not wired up the tach signal wire to that just yet, but that should be pretty simple. Fuel, I do need to figure out how to get the fuel tanks to send fuel level voltage to the gauge correctly, and what ZK found is an adapter box that basically you can tune whatever the sender is sending to whatever the fuel gauge wants. So we're hoping to be able to use the factory fuel gauge, which would be cool, because I actually quite like, to the annoyance of ZK, I quite like the factory gauge cluster setup. It's very simple, and it's just the way that I like it. There is you can get a whole aftermarket gauge cluster assembly for these trucks that bolt into place and make it look more modern, but I'm trying not to do that. Oil pressure, I wish I could have an oil pressure gauge easily. There is no mechanical oil pressure hookup on this engine. There is a sensor on the very back of the engine, and I do believe in the factory truck that is only wired to an idiot light. So in the 96, that just goes to a circuit that flicks a light on if the voltage is too low from that. Whether or not I can use that for a gauge, I kind of doubt it, but it is a threaded hole that goes into oil pressure, and in theory, I should be able to find some way to adapt that to a electronic oil pressure gauge. I used one of those in the 240, and I have loved it. It's great. It's a ton of peace of mind, and there's no, oil lines running around waiting to get severed and causing you to blow up an engine checking your oil pressure. So if I can get one of those to work, that would be great. I would be super happy with that. So gauges, yes, that needs to be done. I obviously still need to finish the fuel switch, and I think that's kind of it for the engine stuff, though. I just went under there and busted the heck out of my thumb tightening the collectors because they were leaking a little bit. But the truck sounds pretty good. I'm very happy with the, what was it, Summit? I think it's Summit. Or Jags. I think it's Summit. Brand muffler, like Flowmaster knockoff. Sounds fine. These engines aren't really notorious for being the best sounding anyway, so I just wanted it to be, a typical V8 sounding truck, and it's done that. The shifter, everything is all hooked up there. I haven't actually used the clutch. I haven't actually moved the truck at all at this point. I do still need to grease the drive shaft. I should do that. But you know what? From there, we might be ready to hit the road, do some testing, because I can't really think of much else that it needs. I'm going to do a lot of cleanup. Like, it's a work truck. It doesn't need to be concours d'elegance. It's never going to be that way. But I do want the wiring to look as respectable as possible. They did such a great job with the engine harness. I want to make sure that the chassis harness side of it looks just as good. So I'm going to buy some more split loom and loom everything together, make it as nice as possible and safe as possible. Like, I need to put grommets in the firewall to make sure nothing's, rubbing on anything. And I want this thing to be reliable. That's why I went for this engine setup. That's why I went for this transmission. That's why I went for all of this stuff, is I want to be able to just use the truck and not worry about it. And I think we're on track to get there. Let me show you the fuel filler situation real quick. So this is the front tank, or basically the main tank, and what I have used is I don't know what to call this, a shroud, an adapter. I wanted to flush these into the side of the bed because it is so very tight to get this truck into the garage. I didn't want this to be proud of the side. And in that, I have put a Ford Ranger fuel filler neck into there. ZK spotted those as being the ones that were on the 96 truck. And they work quite well. Take that off. The problems I had with that were getting enough drop from here down into the tank, because there's a little bit of the filler on that saddle tank. You can't really see it, but the filler on that saddle tank is on the opposite side. So it was a lot of work, but we have fuel in it and it's working. I gotta do the same on the back. I've started that process already. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. There's a rear tank, which by the way is a brand new rear tank I did. And then that will go in there this way, the opposite way. And with that, fueling will be done. All right, so like I said, I don't have a charging system just yet, but while I've got you, we might as well run the thing, right? I really want to see if the exhaust leak has gotten better anyway. It was popping out of the collectors pretty good when I started it the first time. Keys on me, let's see if it starts right up again today. And I will say, if you have any questions about how all this went, or if you want any specifics about the swap, please feel free to ask me. I would love to help you out, because, like I said, there was certainly a lack of information about this out there. I think that's actually that cracked exhaust manifold over here. There is your ramp truck update. Freaking excited. Really, really happy with how everything has gone so far. Just from an entire standpoint, not just the harness, not just the ECU, but the fact the engine went in, the fact the radiator went in, the fact we got gas tanks from the other truck. So many parts from our parts truck, making this truck more modern, making this truck more usable. Super excited. And as you saw, I inched it forward a little bit. First time it's moved. First time the clutches worked. Clutch worked super easy and worked well. Very excited. That will do it for today. Thank you, as always, for all your support. Thanks to everybody that's been watching along on Twitch. It's been an amazing journey, sharing it with you all, and having you come along for the journey and help out. It's been great. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.